Okay, guys, since our little workshop is only half an hour long, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, what we've got going on this time, our last conversation about scaffolding research projects so that we end up getting a product that we like, okay? And we've talked about helping the students choose an appropriate topic, and we've talked about helping students understand what sort of evidence they need. This time we're going to talk about helping students incorporate their evidence into their paper. And I see a lot of that, because a lot of students will come to the library after they've gotten their rough draft back, and the professor has basically bled all over it, you know, and with a lot of commentary about how they didn't use evidence well and stuff like that. And what I see is that either, as Edie said the last time, they're using quotes when really they should be paraphrasing, or they're not really synthesizing the information. They're just kind of saying Article 1 said, Article 2 said, Article 3 said. They might be more sophisticated than that, but not much more. You know, those types of things. So what I want to talk about today is how to help them improve that. And rather than doing a presentation, really, what I put together is a bunch of different exercises that the library has, and it's literally a bunch this time. Every one of these pieces of paper is a different exercise. And the reason for that is I think that this is the part, really, that if we do it starting in 101 and going all the way up to EDU 501 or whatever what's your first nursing one? 520? 510. 510. What's your first HCA one? 300. 300. If we start at the 100 and go up, then we'll really get what we want when we finally get them writing an actual research product. So I want to just start out by showing you, this is our website, the library's website. You guys know to get to that, you just go to www.midway.edu/library. If you scroll down, but if you go to the very bottom of these research guides, research tips is the last link there. If you click on research tips, that takes you to our overall research guide, which talks about everything that I talk about with students. The very last thing, though, link there is really for professors, and that is exercises to build research skills. So if you click on that, that takes you to this page, which has a ton of different exercises that you can use or adapt for use in your class, or have me come to your class to do. And they're broken down by topics like formulating a research topic, finding information, evaluating information, incorporating information, and citing information. So I just wanted to make you aware that those are all there. And I am going to share with you several exercises from incorporating information. So I'm just going to pass these out real quick. And what I've got goes from kind of, actually everybody gets a whole packet. Oh. So, and then one for Becky, and then one for Charles, and then one. Becky, can I borrow a piece? 2, 3, you have 4, and I'm going to give you another one for Charles. Or is she just one? Which one is the 8th? So what I've done is I've organized these from kind of 100 level exercises that you might do in your beginning classes to ending up with one that I used when I directed master's thesis. So that I actually got a lot of positive feedback on. So we're going to start out with the lower level ones. And the first one here, this one's kind of hard to understand, so I'll explain it to you. It's really not one that you could give to your student as homework, I don't think, without giving them some explanation. So with this exercise, what I'm trying to do, the purpose of this exercise is to get them to start thinking about how scholars use evidence in their papers. And so what I do is I pick a scholarly article, preferably one that I wanted them to read anyway, and one that really represents your field. And then I ask them to read it, and what they are to do is, so I actually give them the article. What they are to do is to identify at least 3 points that the author made, probably in the literature review of the paper, and then they write down those 3 arguments right here. Argument 1, argument 2, argument 3. So that's step 1. And, you know, if they can't come up with 3 whole arguments, I'm not going to sit there and fuss with them about it. Or maybe we read it ahead of time, and then in class we talk about those 3 arguments just to make sure that they can get 3 points out of this. Then what I ask them to do is I call attention to the fact that the author of this article didn't just state this argument, they actually presented evidence for it. And I show them where the evidence was cited, and I show them how to go from the parenthetical citation to the actual citation in the reference page. And then I put them in a computer lab and I say, find that article. Find the article that the author cited and read that puppy. And what I want you to do is scan for the part that the original author cited. What did the citation, how did the author use this citation? Did they quote? Did they paraphrase? Did they summarize? And why did they use that piece of evidence? You know, was this a statistic that they needed? Was this just a general trend that they were trying to show that was reflected in this article? How did they use it? Why did they use it? Why did they pick that citation? What would have been lacking in their paper if they hadn't used that citation? And so they have to fill out the source, you know, citation for the source. Did they quote, paraphrase, and why did they use it on this chart? And then we can have a discussion. You know, I can call them up to the board and say, okay, well, you write on the board the reason why you think your person used their citation. And then we can discuss ways that citations are used. I killed 2 birds with this exercise. I do this in 100 level classes. And here are my 2 birds that are dead at the end of this exercise. Bird 1 is I've gotten them to use the library website to find an article. So I've proven to myself that they can do that because they had to find one of the citations in the article that they read. Bird 2 is I've made them consciously think about how other professionals use evidence, and I've had that conversation with them. Just to introduce it. They didn't have to produce, this is low level. I know you guys are sick and tired of hearing about blooms, but this is low level blooms, okay? This is understanding. This is recognizing. This isn't creating yourself. This is just recognizing. Good introduction. So that, and I guess my third bird is that I've introduced to them, what does a scholarly article look like in my field? So those are all things we can talk about. So this is a good 100 level exercise. Any comments or questions about that? Any thoughts?
I think this is a great exercise, and I remember doing my dissertation research, and I went, and I kept thinking, oh, this is such a great quote or whatever, and I went to the primary source, and it was like, darn, I had such a different interpretation of what that author was saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And comically, it's not too hard to actually find places, find articles where when you look up the author's citation, you find that really they haven't used it properly at all. And that can be an interesting conversation to have in the class too, you know? Exactly. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second.
The back of this is like a rubric.
Bingo. Exactly. It's a little matrix for analyzing research. You're going to see a lot of these in this conversation. Okay. The next one that I want to show you guys is, okay. This is another kind of, oops. Yours is actually not quite in the order I decided to do it in, so could you go down one to determine if your research paper is well supported? Sorry, I changed my order when I started thinking about it in here. I do this one of two ways. Sometimes I give them an article, again, a legitimate scholarly article, and sometimes I have them look at something they've written themselves. But in either case, what I tell them is they need 3 colors of pen and the thing that they are analyzing. And what they have to do is choose one color, pen or pencil, whatever, and highlight or underline all the arguments in the paper. So identify the claims that you have made in the paper. Underline those in one color. In the next color, underline all the evidence that supports the claim. So if I say that many high school students have STDs, that is a claim. I've got to support that with a statistic. So that's color 1 and color 2. Now, here's the problem that most professors write on their papers, on their students' papers. You've made your argument. I see your argument. It's clear to me. I see that you have stated evidence. Your evidence is right there. It's either a quote or it's a cited paraphrase. I'm cool with that. What you have not done is you have not analyzed that. You have not applied it to express your own thoughts. So then the third color pencil is for them to highlight their own analysis or thoughts on the argument and the evidence, to make sure that all 3 of those things are in the paper, are present. So if you give them a scholarly article or even a snippet from a scholarly article, you can introduce this concept to them. But I force my students to turn in their rough draft with 3 different colors on it. And then I say to them, if y'all don't have 3 different colors for each one of your arguments, if I see a red argument, but I don't see a green evidence and a yellow analysis, you already know what your paper is going to come back and say. So this can be a pretty cool tool at any level. Comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like the way that you're setting it up, because sometimes an early writer gets so caught up in just blathering out that they don't look at kind of the structure of the paragraph and what the pieces are actually doing.
Supposed to do,
Yeah.
exactly,
So
yeah.
that's a good way to get that.
And there's, I'm sure every field would apply this in some different appropriate way for the field. This works well for humanities, for me, okay? I'm sure you science people are looking at this and going, well, it's not entirely appropriate, but if I did it this way, but that's good, that's the point. The point is that a paper has to contain a claim, evidence, and a student, my own thoughts, or else all I did was resynthesize a bunch of other people's papers, right?
I've been scanning through several of the resources you have.
Great.
For me, I've been working with students who need to pass their praxis test, which is the content knowledge for teaching. Even the kids who are coming in with like ACT scores of 21 can't write.
Right.
So the first thing I do is work with them on how to identify a main idea in a source. But then I teach them the structure of how to do the essay. And it's a very formulaic structure.
Right.
But this would be a really rich tool to add to that, and have them highlight in these colors.
Yeah, and you can apply it in different ways to the
Yeah.
structure that you're using. Maybe you don't have them highlight these things, but whatever structure you're trying to teach them.
This is it, because they need to make a claim. The first paragraph, second paragraph, make your claim, support it with evidence from the article, then you analyze.
Right, yeah, yeah, and if you do this at 100 level, and at 200 level, and at 300 level, by the time they're writing the literature review for you, they can do it, you know? Okay, now one more that's kind of a lower level one that I give to the students. This may be a 200 level one. Now we're at analyzing literature review. By 200 level, hopefully, these students can define literature review. What I like to do in my 200 level classes, just to start beating this horse early, is I will give them the literature review portion of a scholarly paper, nothing else, just the literature review. And I hand it to them, and I have them, we talk a little bit, you know, they read it the night before. That was their reading assignment. And then they come into class, and hopefully everybody's read, that's my dream. And we talk about what have we done with the literature review, what's the purpose, why did this author write this? So we define what a literature review is after having read one and seen the example. And then their assignment, after we've discussed what a literature review is this. I purposefully give them a literature review from, say, the year 2000. And their job is to update that literature review. So if there were 3 arguments in that literature review, then they've got to find 3 more recent pieces of evidence, articles, to add to that literature review. And then they've got to I give them the literature review digitally in a Word document. They've got to rewrite it, incorporating smoothly their new articles. And that is their major writing assignment for that class. And so the birds that I kill with that are they learn what a literature review is. They have they don't have a concept of what one is. They know what one is because they have analyzed one. We've discussed it. And they get a chance to begin struggling with how you can't just say the article from 1990 said, the article from 1995 said, the article from 2000 said, and the article from 2005 said. You've got to take your new article from 2005, 2010, 2015 and incorporate it in with what else was said. So maybe between, and I especially like it when I can find an article where the opinions have changed. So in the year 2000, the prevalent view was, but more recent research has proven. That's a real basic type of incorporation, but at least they're seeing how that works. So this can be a pretty cool exercise. Thoughts on that? Comments?
No, I think you're right, that idea of how things shift and change. Like we're doing disciplinary literacy, we're doing a course, developing a course, but what it used to be was content area literacy or content literacy, but there's a shift and a change, so you couldn't go back with the same kind of statement and make it fit.
Exactly. And that's critical. I guess my third bird, I keep finding third birds as I talk about this, my third bird is I've gotten them to think critically. Got some critical thinking in my writing.
And on a lower end of that, the first thing that came to mind when you said that was eggs. Research on eggs and how eggs were bad for you and all that. And now they're saying
right,
eggs are better for you. So that would be a real simple
New research
one.
out that says though
that they're bad again.
Bad
Yeah,
again.
now they're bad again.
Hey.
Yeah.
So see, and that's a shift.
You are absolutely right, though, because I do this. These are all exercises I use in my UK teaching information literacy class. And I actually did make a note in this section of my class that the article I was going to pull was going to be a nursing article about cholesterol and eggs. And I was going to pull one from when, gee, now they said eggs are great. Because now they're saying eggs are bad again.
Yeah.
We're all going to die if we ate more than 3 eggs a week now. That's right, no more than 3 eggs. Now, before it was no eggs, now it's, then it was okay, now we can only have 3. But yeah, that's exactly it. It's a brilliant 100 level English 102 type of argument,
Right. And to show the inconsistencies in how things happen.
Right.
1 minute, next minute or something else.
Yeah, theories shift. That's normal.
It's like that thing where they said that, drinking even one drink now is bad, but I think that research is flawed.
But I agree with you, that research is
It's
flawed.
flawed. I'm doing some action research on that myself.
And you can discuss that with them, but you better make sure they're all 21.
Yeah, we'll start doing some field tests.
Okay. Now, moving up, so this is kind of a 200 level one. Moving up a little bit. In the 300 level classes, we have some pretty high writing expectations for our students. At this stage, they probably should be writing their own entirely unique basic literature review at least, including an identification of the purpose of a literature review, which is to find the gaps in the research and identify the original topic that you can, the original direction you can go in. They may not do the methodology yet. They certainly probably won't do the, what's my acronym, IRB, to do the actual research yet, but they need to be able to write a literature review, a legitimate literature review. And synthesizing all that information is really hard for them. And duh, because I'm telling you guys something new. So one of the things that I do to help students with that is and this is completely unrelated to this exercise, I just can't resist mentioning it because it's so useful. When you guys did your dissertations, did your dissertation director teach you the card method for organizing your research? Where you would you'd read an article and then you would write down on index cards what the important aspects of that article were, a different card for each important aspect, and the citation would be on there.
I did a matrix like this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about the cards is then you have the citation with the important, what you thought was important written on there. Then when you write your outline, you put your cards with each section of your outline. You actually write in the corner of your card what part of your outline this evidence goes with. You order all your cards up, and then you literally just sit there and start writing. Flip your cards, write your analysis, flip your card, write some analysis, flip your cards. But this gets you there. This is a basic matrix for synthesizing information. And so when I give students 300 level assignments where they're really doing a literature review, I require them to turn this in with their annotated bibliography. I require an annotated bibliography, and I require them to turn this in with it. Because otherwise, what I get for an annotated bibliography was perfectly good citation, summary, possibly this author wasn't biased and is a credible source, and no analysis. So if I make them do this matrix, they put their arguments here. It makes them focus on the arguments that they need, the reasons why they need evidence in their paper. It takes the focus off of, my teacher said 5 sources, my teacher said 10 sources, my teacher said 20 sources. Puts the focus on the arguments they need to make to support their paper. And then they put their citations up here. And if citation 1 supports this argument, they explain in this box how. Maybe citation 2 doesn't support it at all, so it's blank. If source 3 supports it, then they explain how here. And this focuses them where I want them focused, on the article, not on the number of sources.
Well, and this isn't just 300 level work. I teach at master's level, and I use a matrix very, very similar to this.
Wait for it.
And what I'm finding is that I have students, when it comes to main findings or key ideas, identifying descriptions.
Right.
For that are not. So having to teach them, here's what we're looking for. We're looking at leadership styles, blah, right, shared leadership. Where is the key finding here on shared leadership?
Right.
Tell me the school size.
Right, exactly, yeah, exactly. It puts their focus in the right place. And I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit because when I taught master's thesis, this is what I had my students do. This is my matrix for a master's level class.
Yeah.
Citation, it's really similar. Citation, the purpose, rationale, or research question in that article, the theory or framework that it employed, the research, a description of the research methods, samples and variables, if that's applicable. In the humanities, that was less applicable, but in your all's cases, it might be. Major findings of the article, in other words, their major conclusions, and most importantly, because you're trying to identify original research opportunities here, kids, what were the limitations or gaps that this author admitted to for his study? If you're interested in XYZ and 10,000 people have studied it from this angle and all of them said, but it needs to be studied from that angle, do that. He told you what to do, man. Okay? But they don't think that way. You say original research to them and they panic. They're like, I'm just a senior. How am I going to put up with original research? It's right there. Okay? And then I have them fill out, how is this research linked to the other research that you've looked at, if you can follow something? What are the themes that you're starting to see because you read this? And other miscellaneous helpful notes about this. Like, for example, this article has great statistics on blah, 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 you know? And again, I require them to turn this in with their annotated bibliography. So that can be a really, really useful tool. Higher level, more complicated matrix. And obviously you can change that to put anything in there that's applicable for your field. When I did Spanish master's thesis, I took out methodology and variables and samples because we don't have that when we analyze literature. Okay? But I put in different things.
This is going to sound a little ridiculous, but in the 501 course, it's the one introductory course that everybody has to take. That's where they work their first literature course.
Right.
Everybody reads the same 4 articles. Week 3 in the course, after they've read the 4 articles, the discussion forum posting has become discuss the key themes to state original busted articles. And I intentionally did that because what we saw is that they're talking about it with each other, that it helps them see it and put it into the paper.
Exactly.
It just that one simple
Right.
exercise.
Right. It makes them change their focus from I'm summarizing this to I am reading this critically. They don't yet know how to read critically.
Right.
They know how to read for information, for content. To regurgitate, they need to learn how to read critically. It's a different skill, and we have to teach it. Okay. Then, so that matrix right there, I kind of jumped ahead, is this last piece of paper that I gave you. I'm going to show you then, last thing, my miniature literature review assignment. And we're pretty much out of time, but I'll just leave you with this to think about. You'll notice that my miniature literature review assignment, this is the culminating exercise in my 100 level information literacy and critical thinking class at UK. I give them this on the very first day. And so their goal is to identify a research question. They have no idea what that means. Find 6 to 9 scholarly articles. They have no idea what a scholarly article is. And write a 3 to 5 page literature review following the specific format that I give them here. Most of them turn in more than 5 pages, and that's through me with me. I just don't want to. I've already freaked them out with 6 to 9 sources and blah blah blah. So notice that the entire assignment is here. Choose a topic. narrow the topic, all the types of things that we talked about in this series. Right, exactly. Do some research on your narrowed topic. Can you answer these questions? Identify the themes and types of analysis and approaches. Blah, blah, blah. And then on the back is the actual structure. 100 level class, reasonable expectations, but then I can reuse this again in my 200 level class at UK, and I don't teach any 300 level classes there, but you could up it a bit and use it at 300 and 400 level. But this is the type of assignment that is going to get them from point A, where they're starting out, to point B, where you want them. They need all of this structure, especially at the beginning, so that when they get to the 400 level teachers, the 400 level teachers don't say, well, what did they teach them in 101? Okay. Questions or thoughts or comments? I really appreciate all of you guys coming today. I know that you're stressing out at this time of the semester, and you've got honors night to hang around for and everything. I really appreciate it. Questions, comments, reviews. I love to hear your all's feedback.
Actually, the thing that came to my mind when you were talking about this, you're right to say they're just starting out, because we have no idea where they've come from.
Exactly.
And the structures that they've been taught, the formats have been taught or not taught, it's all over the place. So this is ground zero.
Right, right. I always assume 0. And if somebody's already at 10 and I want them to be at 20, I'm a happy camper. But if I assume 0, then we're all going to get to 20,
Right.
not just one of us.
Right, right.
And this is really nice to see another way of doing
Perspective,
it.
yeah.
I give the master's students, I give them 2 possible structures they can work. And for the 501 course, what I actually did was write mini lit reviews,
Right.
which is an example of each structure. So
Yeah,
they can
yourself, nice
Smaller
and
version.
clear. Yes, those things that you wrote were brilliant. And I recommend that if you guys are doing literature reviews unsuccessfully in your classes, ask to see Sue's, because she really did a great job. You shared those with me, remember? You did a great job.
But you have to backward map. You have to.
Right.
That's our job.
Right, because we're supposed to be teaching them how to read critically, think critically, and write critically.
Exactly. I think sometimes as instructors and professors, students come to the table and we have the expectation that they already know some of this, so we talk over top of them, and so you get what you get
Right.
from them as a result.
Then you get a student on April 11th who's in tears because they just figured out the definition of a literature review, and they have one due on the 25th.
But when I went to graduate school the 3rd time,
Right?
this was so helpful
Yeah.
because I'm a visual person.
Right.
And so it's what I needed. The first time that we did this, I was blown away because it was too much going on. But the professor did not outline it and scaffold it so that we got what we needed to get where we needed to be.
Right.
But the 3rd time when we got this, I was like, well, whoa, I'm on point with this.
Yeah. This actually, the more activities you can do, the better, but this really helps students who are visual learners. And that's personally me, so that's why I teach this.
Well, it's again structure.
Right.
Is it more difficult for online?
I don't think so.
No.
Because these activities, you just have to, give them the reading, tell them to do the reading, give them a little discussion for them to talk about the reading, and then give them the assignment. You can totally, and if you want to, if you feel like they need to hear an explanation that you could make it better verbally, make a quick video or podcast explaining 2 minutes, no more. We went through 6 activities in 30 minutes. So you could definitely make a 5-minute video explaining the assignment and getting them rolling, and then just put it in Moodle. Yeah.
I do them on.
Yeah. All of Sue Lasky's are online, and you make videos.
I do.
Thank you guys so much. I'll see y'all at honors. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. Serious, scary flashbacks.
I'd like to see one of your videos.
They are available, of course, Master